All right, new release from Compass Games, Enemy Action Kharkov, the sequel to Enemy Action Ardennes, of which I was a huge fan of. It's a card-driven CDG with a really interesting chip pull combat system. So I pre-ordered this quite some time ago, and I'm finally happy that it's arrived on my doorstep. So I figured I would just open it up real quick and show you what's inside. Obviously, this is, as you can see, Popov versus Manstein, February 1943, East Front, World War II. Huge box, big 3-inch box, comes packed full of goodies. Nice cover. Not the typical really. So Compass, like their box like width gauge thickness like varies game to game. It's really weird. Granada has like a bulletproof box like you find from GMT. This is slightly less bulletproof, so it's a little bit thinner. But it's exactly like the Enemy Action Ardennes box. In case you were wondering, there's a massive Compass Games catalog in here, which I will look at later. Some baggies, which I'm going to store this game in counter trays when GMT gets more in stock, which they should be getting in stock here pretty soon. I saw in their latest update they've got more counter trays on the way. You get one D10. This is a D10 system. When you need to roll the dice, I should say. You don't actually roll dice in combat, and I'll explain that. Here are 2 decks of cards. So this game is interesting in that you can play it solo as either side versus an AI, or you can play it 2 players, and it's brilliant either way. I'll open these in a moment. And then it looks like we have some errata cards from Enemy Action Ardennes, which is great because Enemy Action Ardennes had some kind of, not unplayable, but like some annoying card mistakes. So I will open this in a bit, and I'll show you sort of what these replace in Enemy Action Ardennes. I'm excited to get these. So yeah. So what else is in here? A ton of stuff. So first of all, each of the solo games comes with 2 fold-out player aids. So this is the Soviet. If you're playing the Soviet side, this is all the stuff that that you will need to play player aid wise. So these are all the different combat tactics and command events that the German player can potentially choose in combat. Here's all the procedures for doing an attack for each side, like how the AI responds to your attacks, how you draw the process for drawing combat chits, what the different combat chits can do, combat hit calculation. It's a little different than the 2-player game when you're playing solo. Applying hits, like the order in which hits are applied by the defender, who is obviously an AI. I know it looks like a lot here. This is a lot of text, but once you do it a couple times, it becomes pretty much second nature. The direction that the forces retreat in advance. And then obviously you've got for yourself, you've got your combat tactics and shits here. And then this player aid is going to be sort of the way that Germans deploy reinforcements, stuff for you to reference about where you put your units, German garrison markers. I think that's something new for this game. On the inside, the German activation steps, so what the Germans do on their turn if you're playing the Soviets. Again, it looks like a lot, but it becomes second nature kind of once you do it. Some rules to keep in mind about how the German AI can move, stuff like that. It's a really innovative, cool system. So you get 2 player aids there. You're also going to get 2 player aids if you're going to play the German side, and it's basically the same thing except telling you what the Soviets do. I believe this game there is some asymmetry between the sides from some of the stuff they've added in the rules, from my understanding. So you get more. See, the Soviet action steps is a little different here. There's a bunch of different stuff, like you roll a die, and based on the die you roll, certain different things are going to happen, which is pretty interesting. So yeah, there's lots to dig into here if you're a solo player. This is a great system. If you're looking for a nice, meaty war game with a really innovative AI system, John Butterfield's design on this game is incredible. In terms of getting an AI to play a CDG hex and counter game against you. Pretty impressive what people are able to do on the design space. Here are the counters. You get 4 sheets of counters. This is the game is going to be formation based, so you can see that the counters look like I'm not sure what scale the game is at. Might be, not sure. But I believe each of the banners on top, you're going to activate formations when you play cards, might be corps, divisions, from what I recall. So infantry, you can see the tanks. These look like they're Russian. These look like they're probably also Russian, Soviets, Germans in gray. Yeah, Germans were in gray in Ardennes. They're really nice, obviously. They're, pre-rounded. It's going to be really nice to play with. Here's the reverse side. Some of the counters. Very nicely done. Like I said, going to store in counter sheets. That's counter sheet 1, counter sheet 2, more Germans, and then here you've got the combat chits. So what's really cool about this game is that you have a cup of combat results chits, which are all these white ones. And based on the number of steps and the number of units that are involved in the combat, that gives you a maximum number of chits for you to draw. Or that you can draw. And then you decide how many chits you're going to draw before the combat. And you don't have to draw your maximum number. You can draw a lower number. And the reason you might do that is because some of the chits are good and bad. So for example, you can see here that if your odds are greater than or equal to 5 to 1 and you draw this chit, you'll do 2 hits to the enemy, but you'll take 1, right? Or here, a large attack, A1, D1, it's an exchange result, basically. And so sometimes chits, you may not want to take the losses. You know, the chits might be, you might want to just do a smaller attack where the effect is minimal because you're afraid of taking losses. And what's cool is that the chits are double-sided. So you look on one side to see if the conditions are met. And if they're not met, for example, if the attacker doesn't have artillery, then you flip the chit over and you would look and see, is it greater than or equal to 2 to 1 kind of thing. So there's a lot of variability in this. It's a really interesting system. And you just draw from a cup based on like how many units are in the attack. It's really innovative, unlike anything else I've ever played. But it does mean there's like a fog of war in combat, so it's not deterministic. And so people who really like deterministic combat tables, I could understand what if they wouldn't like this, but I think that it's really interesting from a narrative perspective to see kind of how your attacks happen. You know, you may set up a perfect attack, but the results aren't exactly what you wanted. So it definitely gives you sort of a sense of being removed from the actual battlefield from a command position, which is kind of cool. Control markers. Out of ammo markers, looks like dispersed markers, I believe, is one of the results. Weather down here. I think this is interdicted from what I recall from Enemy Action Ardennes. Yeah, pretty cool. And then here's a second set of the combat chits. So if for some reason you want to use blue instead of white, or you lose one, but there's 2 sets of the combat chits. That's the same from Enemy Action Ardennes as well. So very nice, 4 counter sheets. Here we have a sheet that looks like it's errata. Oh, I see. Yeah, so this is Enemy Action Ardennes giving you 12 corrected cards. And it tells you on which cards, how they're corrected, which is really nice. So again, that's, where did I put the command deck? Here it is. This is this. So these 12 cards, it's telling you what's corrected here. Looks like there is one piece of errata for... This is also a setup card that's in that pack as well, so that fixes that. And then it looks like there's one piece of errata for Enemy Action Kharkov, which is a correction to the German solo rules, which looks like super minor. Yeah, it looks like it's just like an addendum to an example, so not a huge deal. So that's pretty nice. You get, it looks like, this is the second one of these? Huh. I got 2 copies of the little errata sheet. So, interesting. Okay, might have been a mistake, but there you go. So here's the command card display. So when you are playing the game, this is for the 2-player or the Soviet solo. So you're going to, and here's the terrain effects chart on the back. I assume there's 2 of these. But, you know, pretty simple in terms of terrain, movement costs, and other effects in combat. It's not too complicated. But yeah, basically at the beginning of every turn, so the deck kind of builds sequentially over the course of the game. So you're going to have... cards that enter play on a certain turn will be here. They'll get moved up into your available deck. Then those will all get shuffled, moved to your draw pile. Discards from the last turn get moved over, so they're available next turn. So you never have cards from one turn carry over immediately to the next turn, which is kind of interesting. So there's 2 types of cards: primary, which are like your core cards that are always in your deck, as you can see, and then your supplemental cards, which are sort of special cards that like augment what you can do. And so as you play them, they go here, and then they'll cycle through, and they'll miss one turn, and then they'll come back to your deck. And basically at the beginning of every turn, you'll just do this. It becomes, again, second nature. You just follow the diagram, follow the numbers. But it's pretty cool because new cards enter the game, makes the turns more, like, it can change sort of the length of the turns, what you can do on your turns, more capabilities. I know in Enemy Action Ardennes, the allied deck starts pretty weak, but as the turns go by, they get more and better cards. And it changes kind of the way the game feels as it plays. Here's the German and 2-player version for this. Again, terrain effects on the back. Pretty nice to have that. All right, so there's 3 rule books in here. So we have got the Soviet solo rules, and this is pretty hefty. This is, looks like, yeah, 43 pages of solo rules. Lots of examples, though. So I will say, like, for example, you got full-page examples of strategic movement. Like, the game does a really good job of teaching you how to play solo through the examples. It's not as dense as the page count would have you believe. I mean, it's still pretty dense, but... like I said, once you put it into practice for a few turns, it starts to really smoothly flow, and it kind of makes sense about what's going on. So yeah, so there's a rule book, and then by the way, I should mention this is the enemy action or den rules were a map paper. These are kind of glossy. I don't know if people care about that. I certainly don't. But there's the Soviet solo rules. Here's the 2-player rules. So this is a much thinner rule book because it doesn't need to talk about the AI and how things happen there. But again, examples very heavily exampled, which is really nice. This is not a hard system to learn, but it is a hard system to play well. It's pretty straightforward. It's only, here's a nice key changes from enemy action Ardennes, some of the rules that have been changed, but actually fairly significant. Pretty interesting. Can't wait to get this to the table and see. Design notes start on page 26, so really you're talking about 25 pages of rules. So not, and that's actually scenarios there as well, so not at all difficult to learn this game. You know, this is less than some other games, and it is a CDG. So not a traditional CDG in the sense of, well, I'll show you the cards later. Not like Paths of Glory. It's got its own kind of CDG system, but it is a CDG. Here's the German solo rules. Again, if you're playing from the German perspective, you've got to learn how the Soviet AI operates and whatnot. This one comes in at 50 pages, so it's even more pages than the German solo rules and sequence of play here on the back. That's pretty nice. Here's a 2-player player aid, lots of player aids. This is just all the combat tactics and chits, the special chits that you can get, special events that can happen via cards, reminders on how to trace supply, you know, withdrawal, strategic movement, drawing combat. Here's the drawing the combat chit summary. You know, see 1 chit per attacking unit with 1 or 2 steps, and then you get bonus chits if there's other conditions met, and then you'll draw them. Just a reminder of how to play the game. Another terrain effects chart if players need it. That's pretty nice. All right, the maps. So there are 3 maps in this game. Each map, and by the way, it's a very nice quality. It's a pretty thick paper stock, which is nice. There are 3 maps in this game. Each map is going to be the same map, but it's going to be for which version of the game you're playing. So for example, this is the Soviet solo map. And let's see if I can zoom out a little bit. Yep. You see I've got Der Weltkrieg going on the table over there. So this is the Soviet solo map. It's got the turn track over here. The German deck right here if you don't want to play with one of those sheets. Victory points. Or I guess this would be the German AI deck. Yeah, okay, that would be, if this is the Soviet solo map, this is where the German cards would go. It's how you manipulate the German cards. And so you can see that the map only takes up about 2/3, 3/4 of the sheet. But you can see all these arrows all over it. And this represents, I'll zoom in, this represents the paths of advance and retreat, I believe, that the German units will take under the AI. Obviously, locations are worth victory points. Here's Kharkov itself. Pretty much clear terrain all over the place, which is, of course, indicative of the East Front. This wide sweeping maneuvers. Slavyansk, Kramatorsk. You know, how much of this map is relevant to today, right? With Kharkiv, the Kharkiv front in Ukraine right now. So that's the Soviet solo map, and then you're going to get one that's going to be the same, except it's going to be the German solo map, and again, it's going to have the same stuff on it. It looks like it is a slightly different perspective. Actually, it looks like it's a different part of the battlefield. So you can see that Kharkiv is here. And it actually goes off to the east a lot further. So, you know, presumably the Soviets are going to be advancing from this direction, which is interesting. That you get kind of a different perspective on the battlefield, different play space, it appears. Sorry about this in the way, tripod in the way. But anyways. So yeah, so same kind of thing here. And then finally, you get the 2-player map. And let's see what this one looks like. This one actually, I can get it open. This one actually has a vertical orientation. Oh, that's fascinating. Am I missing? Huh. The 2-player map has a vertical orientation. Weirdly, so at the top, you've got the turn track. You've got the turn track and the different eliminated units areas, and then it's vertical, but it's also printed. The text is printed the other way around. I'm not sure why they did that. I guess because players are going to sit one side to the other on either side like this. But it's strange that they would print the text reverse like that. So you can see another sort of different perspective here with Kharkiv in the top, at the top of the map in the center. Russians this way, Germans this way. You can see the victory point locations that each side would be trying to hold or capture. I guess maybe it's not a different perspective. I guess maybe they just printed the text differently, because this looks like very similar to the Soviet solo map if I put it this way, basically. Oh, in fact, it is exactly that, I believe. That's a really interesting decision. I'd be curious to see how that plays out in practice. So anyways, that's what you get in Enemy Action Kharkov, which I'm very excited for. Here's the back of the box. Let me crack open the cards real quick, and I'll be right back. All right, so here you can see some of the cards. These are German, I believe, German player command cards. So if you're playing 2 players, the German player will have these. But basically, the way the game works is you can play the card. It activates the specific units from a specific army, so it'll be this color gray units with the blue banner, the XL, I think it's 40th Panzer Corps, or 90th, one of the two, I think it's 40th Panzer Corps. And then you do one of these things. So, you know, you can deploy to reserves, you can activate all the units, you can assign a replacement point, you can use this card to activate any one unit. So if you have a bad hand, you can at least still activate something. Or you can choose to play these cards in battle for a tactic, and that is when you draw a chit, if the chit says air power on it, you usually get a benefit out of it. So it's a really interesting system. Here's the 3rd Corps from the 1st Panzer Army. Here's Army der Kampf, Corps Raus Kampfgruppe. Yep. And so you get some special units. Here's the 4th Panzer Army. So these will be the green or dark gray colored units with the 2nd SS Panzer Corps. They were in Ardennes, I believe, too. So anyways, yeah, so you'll play a card. You'll have a hand. You'll play a card. You'll choose how you want to play it for one of these things, or you'll play it for an event, or you'll play it for its combat tactic, basically. And you have a certain number of cards per hand. It's a really interesting system. Here's von Manstein. This obviously is a very powerful card. Does a lot of stuff, or in combat provides you potential... A lot of stuff. Voronezh front. These are the Russian cards, it looks like. Yeah, these are the Soviets. So here's the German player cards. Here are the Soviet player cards. Southwestern front, Voronezh front. Yeah. Pretty cool. Army. This is more Germans. Are these the solo? Some of these cards are probably solo. German enemy. Yeah. So if it says enemy command on the back, these are going to be the AI cards. So yeah, and these are the AI cards as well. It looks like, yeah. So these are all the AI cards. So this is going to be when you're playing solo. What happens basically, which is pretty nice. Let me get the other deck open. So yeah, so the Soviet player cards look pretty similar to the enemy cards. These are all the Soviet player cards if you're playing 2-player. Stavka there. So yeah, so Soviet player command, this is what you're going to want to use if you're playing 2-player. German player command, you're going to want to use if you're playing 2-player. So these two are going to probably go together in the box. You've got the Soviet and German enemy command, and then of course you've got this deck of what are German action cards, which are kind of like special events that the AI will use in specific situations. So there's usually a qualifier, like if this is true, do X, Y, and Z. These were in Enemy Action Ardennes as well, but it looks like only the Germans have them in this game. So I think in Ardennes, I think the Allies had them as well. So yeah, so these will be used in the solo game as well. So those are all the cards. Now I'm going to pack this up, and then I will show you the errata cards for Enemy Action Ardennes so you can see what they fixed. So real quick, here's some of the errata cards and what they're fixing. So here's the default Enemy Action Ardennes card that shipped with the box. You can see that they changed it so that instead of saying 7th Panzer Army, it says 7th Army. Other than that, I don't think there's many other huge differences. Obviously, the color doesn't match perfectly, but it's not a huge deal. I think once they're sleeved and on the back, I mean, the colors match better on the back, as you can see. So not a huge deal, but yeah, obviously it's really nice that they fixed this stuff. Again, 7th Army, 7th Panzer Army. A lot of this stuff is super minor. It didn't make the game unplayable at all. They fixed some of the Allied action cards. These are the old ones. These are the new ones. I'm not even sure what the actual fix is on those. A setup card got fixed or the hex was wrong. Totally playable stuff. Not a huge deal. And it's nice that they fixed it. So that's what you get in Enemy Action Kharkov. Really excited to get this to the table. And, you know, maybe I'll do this on the channel when I'm feeling some World War II action. But thanks for watching. And if you're going to be playing Enemy Action, would love to hear your thoughts on the system. I really love it. It comes highly recommended for me.